Hello, everybody, and welcome to the brand new Enterprise Dish. I am your host, Brad Sams. You probably see me a few places around on Petrie's side, but we are launching, to be honest, one of the more exciting things and something that I've wanted to do pretty much since I ever started working at Petrie. It was almost 3 years now. Is actually launch a proper enterprise IT Pro podcast. We have a lot of good content on the Petrie side. We do video on occasion, but we want to make this a regular thing. And we have a very nice role of highly credible, very well-known people in the industry who are going to be stopping by on a very regular basis to help us dive through the things that are not only challenging the IT Pro, things that are going to make you better at your job, but also just keep you up to date. So when you go into that next meeting, you are well prepared for everything in your topical field. And this week, I'm actually very excited about this. We have my man, Dux. And you know what, Dux? You are at just about every single Microsoft event. If you've ever gone to a Microsoft event in the past probably 3 years or so, I can guarantee Dux has probably been there. But he can introduce himself better than I can. So Dux, take it away.
Thank you, buddy. Hi, everyone. Very, very excited to be a part of this show, The Enterprise Dish. Since I love food, I guess that's what we're going to talk about, right, Brad? But my name is Dux Raymond Sai. I serve as a CMO of AvePoint and been very grateful, been involved in this ecosystem, in this industry for over 16 years. So very glad and excited to be here.
And we're honestly extremely excited that you're here for a multitude of reasons. One, bluntly, you're good on camera. I've seen you last time I think I saw you on camera. You were on stage at Channel 9, was at Ignite. And so it's just fun to be able to do these things with people who are energetic and love this stuff as much as I do. And obviously, Dux, you know a ton about Office 365. And I've been waiting to ask somebody with your expertise and all that good stuff for a while. And we're going to start at the high level here, folks, and then we're going to work our way through, and we're going to work our way through challenges. And if you have any questions that you want to propose to Dux, we're going to be doing this for about the next year at least. So feel free at any time to kind of email us, reach out and poke around and say, hey, look, I've got this particular issue, and can you help us out? And we will, we have the resources, especially on Dux's side, to actually get you a real answer to your technical problems. But Dux, let's start off with a nice, easy one here. Office 365, Microsoft has over 100 million active users. Why?
I mean, it's just brilliant, right? If you think about 6-7 years ago, everybody was predicting the demise of Microsoft. Oh, their days are numbered. They're just stuck in the Office world, the Windows world. Those days are done. But in the sheer brilliance, they took that user base who's so used to using Office, especially in their work environment, and then introduced this cloud-based platform for productivity and collaboration, Office 365, and essentially transformed those traditional users to leverage the platform. So to your question, how come they have over 100 million users? Well, they already have this base set of users available, and it's just a matter of moving them to this cloud-based platform, Office 365. And obviously, since then, Microsoft has acquired a whole lot of new users and new customers, especially in the enterprise space.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because, I mean, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. This is one of Microsoft's first kind of deep dives into software as a service, right? They had Windows Assurance kind of floating around and other things in place, but this felt like this was Microsoft going all in on taking what everybody thought was, you know what, here's a couple $100 every 3 to 5 years, and then I keep it, and now, people are paying monthly, and that was a big risk. I would have to think that they went back and forth, but the thing is it's paid off, seriously, because over 100 million users. I'm curious, do you ever hear people wanting to go back to the old?
Well, not at all, because, especially in this day and age, people are so used to this subscription model now. I mean, for example, do you want to go back to Blockbuster? or do you want to go back? Do you want to go back waiting on the street corner,
right,
waiting for a taxi? We're so used to this new world of subscription, on demand. I'll use as much as I want. And if I want more, it will scale. I don't have to worry buying more servers or hiring more people to install stuff. So I think it's here to stay. And the beauty with Office 365, it solves the problem of, number one, cost, right? I mean, if you think about it, Office 365 starts at, I think, $8 a user a month with their what they call Enterprise E1 license. But even at that, right, at the high end of the spectrum, they have the $35 per user per month for E5, which you get everything, including phone calls. But if you think about that cost, it's really dirt cheap. As an example, for us as a company, we're using Office 365. because of us moving to Office 365 alone, we saved about $400,000 just in conference calls compared to our old system. So it's very compelling, not only from a cost perspective, but also from an ease of use, because everybody's used to using Office, Exchange, and to some extent SharePoint. So it's here to stay, and with the continuous innovation and new technology that it offers, I think it just makes it much more powerful and a stronger case for the enterprise to leverage it.
Yeah, and I want to try to put some framework around what you just said. You said you saved about $400,000 in conference calls. Is that what it was?
Yes, sir. We saved $400,000 alone just by going to Office 365. We used to have a separate dial-in system. I'm sure a lot of enterprise companies are familiar with this, where you subscribe to a provider, everybody gets their dial-in. You may have your own online meeting platform as well. That's totally separate from maybe your existing Microsoft investment. And we're a company of about 1,500 people around the world. So just do the math. If we all had our conference bridges, we do meetings, but just by moving to Office 365, forget mail, forget SharePoint, just that calling piece alone saved us $400,000.
Yeah, and so actually you hit on the point that I was going to go to next, is actually how large is your organization. So if you are listening to this and you work for a large company, he gave a nice round figure of about 1,500 employees, $400,000. I mean, that's real money, man. Like, that's not chump change at the end of the day.
Well, and that's the other point, right? The common thinking is, yeah, it saves a lot of money for big companies, but then if I even go to the other end of the spectrum, if I was a small organization, I had a business before with a company of 20 people, 30 people, but there are technologies at that time that I just couldn't afford. I couldn't afford to install on-prem SharePoint with on-prem Exchange, on-prem Link at that time, and hire people to take care of it. It's too expensive. But what Microsoft has done with Office 365 is provide smaller organizations with enterprise-class capability. And that is a game changer for a lot of organizations as well. So the beauty of Office 365 is actually it caters for organizations, small, mid-size, or even large enterprises worldwide.
Yeah, it's real interesting to see this shift. And obviously Microsoft has found a lot of success with this, and they're trying to modernize other platforms like Windows and all that. But I think it's pretty fair to say that Office has by far been their beacon and shining example of how to take on-prem software, turn it into a service, and be really, really darn successful at it.
And the powerful thing about this, too, is Microsoft didn't just stop on the basics, right? So what do I mean by that? When back in the days when people thought, oh, Microsoft's going to take on-prem, so let's kind of break that down. They took Office, the productivity tools, your Excel, your PowerPoint, Word. Fine, you can now do it online, and you can, through Office 365, download the software, still use it. So that's one piece. The other piece is mail and calendaring. So they took Exchange, stuck it up. Collaboration with SharePoint, file sharing with OneDrive. But then more and more people see Microsoft introducing newer capabilities around collaboration communication. Things like Office 365 groups, and Teams, and Planner, and Staff Hub, and Run DMC. No, not that last one. But the point being is, you're not paying more for these things.
Yeah.
Right? And when I talk to people, sometimes customers tell me, I don't understand. Microsoft keeps introducing these new things. But I say, well, look, even if Microsoft don't introduce these new things, well, guess what? There's somebody in your organization, that marketing department may like using competing technologies like Slack, which you don't have visibility to, which you're paying money for. Wouldn't it be great if they use a similar technology, in this case, Microsoft Teams? It may not be perfect. There's no perfect tool, but you're not paying extra. But at the same time, you have some form of guardrails around it because it's using the same authentication. It's using the same compliance and security capabilities that the rest of the Office 365 platform provides. And to me, that's very, very compelling.
Yeah, let's just kind of dive in there. That's a nice little segue because I have a very biased opinion because I like Teams a lot, and I've kind of followed that entire journey. I was at the launch of it, and I spoiled some of their goods before they were ready to go out. But this week, actually, depending on when you're listening to this, Microsoft is now allowing external guests into the platform. So they're finally starting to close that gap of why people might use Teams. What kind of benefit do you see somebody using external guests now? Like, where does that come into the formula of team success?
So there's a couple great scenarios, right? So when Microsoft Teams first came out, it was great, but the challenge was it was only limited to folks within your organization that's using the same Office 365 tenant and within obviously the same group of subscription. But naturally, especially in this day and age, you may work with people outside of your organization. So the concept of external guests and external collaboration is real. So what Microsoft did, they first introduced the capability to do external guests, but the challenge was that external entity needs to have what's called an Azure AD account, or long story short, another type of Microsoft-based credential. And if you think about it, some companies, especially if they're not using Microsoft, they may not have that type of account. So as Brad mentioned, recently Microsoft announced that, look, we're also going to support gmail.com authentication, outlook.com, I believe. So that now opens up the door for possibilities where I'm not limited to only work with people with Azure AD account, but I may be working with a vendor that they might not even be using Microsoft technologies. You know, they're a small organization, they're just using Gmail, but I can still work with them, collaborate them. And more importantly, organizations like that will have experience using Teams, which potentially can open up new channels of business for Microsoft.
Interesting. So I want to ask a pretty blunt question here. When Microsoft started pitching Teams, and internally, externally, it was actually called Skype Teams at one point, they were hoping that this platform was going to replace email. Maybe not today, but eventually. Do you see any organizations going like all in on things where they're saying, you know what? Obviously, you can't get rid of email completely because you still have external guests and whatever and all that good stuff. But do you see any companies limiting their use of email because of Teams?
I think so. I think this promise of being more collaborative and real time and fast paced, Teams provide that capability. Will email reduce? With organizations who would fully embrace this, I think email will reduce. So for example, for us, we've used Teams since it started, and I can see and I can tell you that I can see people are shifting their thinking now that, look, for a lot of the within intra-organizational collaboration, communication, there's really no reason to use email. It will take time. And the analogy I use all the time is people always sometimes ask me, well, Dux, it's not realistic. Email is here to stay forever. That's how people work. But I would ask people like, look, in your personal life, forget work. When do you use email to engage and interact with people? You don't, right? The only time you use email is to get your Amazon.com package receipt, right?
Yeah, you're right.
Our normal go-to is when you want to talk to your family or friends, you want to hang out, what? You fire up WhatsApp, you fire up Facebook Messenger, you create a group. It's so natural now. And especially you talk about millennials coming into the workforce, this mode of working is very familiar. So through time, I think the use of email will reduce, but email is not going to go away.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. And one of the other benefits here, too, that I don't think a lot of people think about is when you have employee churn. It's inevitable. It's part of business. It happens. And if you're using Teams, it's very easy to go back and look at that historical content from that individual, as opposed to previously it was like, well, here's their inbox. Good luck. And now with Teams, when they leave and you cycle a new person in, they can go back and look at that history and be added to the conversations. And it keeps all that historical knowledge, which is a big problem, especially as Dux likes to talk about millennials. I'm of that generation. As the older generation begins to retire, there's a ton of ingrained knowledge that we're going to lose. And being able to at least have a place that you can go search for it, because Google's not going to pull that up, is going to be immensely valuable here in the very, very near future.
No, and the other simple use case, right? So for my, I'm going to call my posse, because if I use the word teams, people get confused. So for my posse, I have a posse of 60 people around the world, and they have different functions, different roles, but we're all in with Teams. So any given point in time, I can just jump on Teams, depending on what they're working on. I can just kind of scroll through what people are working on. I can jump in the conversation without bugging people. Hey, where's this? Where's that? What are you working on, right? Yeah. So certainly that's very powerful and useful, and really much, much more efficient than the traditional way of spamming a lot of people, and then conversation starts happening and then starts threading. It's just a mess.
Yeah, somebody, I wish I could remember who told me this, but I think it's great, and I'll see if you agree with it. But they describe Teams as the open office software concept, right? Rather than, going in your office and literally ripping down the walls, and to your point, trying to figure out what's going on. By using Teams as a company, a manager or anybody else can go through and be like, okay, what's happening in marketing today? Where's that project? And they can just pop in and out of the right channels and learn without actually having to go visit somebody. Not that we all don't want to talk to people, but it kind of gives you that insight without actually physically getting rid of the walls, which a lot of us like actual offices.
Well, the other thing that you made me think about is, I don't know if you read Tony Hsieh's book. Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, he's very passionate about people collaborating and working together. Mm-hmm. So he has this concept of serendipitous collision, where that's why his offices are all open, and the idea is just people hearing conversations or bumping into each other. So point being is, with Microsoft Teams, it provides that opportunity, at least in the virtual space, to have that serendipitous collision for new ideas or new innovation or conversations to come up.
Yeah, and it definitely seems like from the Microsoft side too, that's where they're putting a lot of their energy and focus lately, is in this Teams product. Mostly because, Word can only evolve so much, right? You can have great spell check and you can do so much. Excel, obviously better macros, better integration with R and that kind of stuff. But Teams is what to me feels like a whole new world for Microsoft, and they're dumping a lot of resources and a lot of effort into trying to make sure that this is going to truly replace Skype for Business, because the company, I believe, it announced late last year, that application, not immediately, is going away eventually in favor of Teams.
Well, it's going away in Office 365, but for those that are still on-prem using Skype for Business Server, they'll still continue to invest and continue to allow customers to take advantage of it.
Yes, which that is a very important distinction. If anybody's listening and you're all on-prem and I just gave you a heart attack, I do apologize. But Dux, this is why Dux is around. He's very good with, clarifying my gaffes, because let's just be honest, there's going to be quite a few of them over our journeys together. Next kind of...
So what's the lowdown on this thing about Microsoft Teams being free?
That's a great question, Dux. Thank you for following and reading what I write. Actually, Dux, you guys might have access to this. So if you're not aware, one of the things that Teams allows is for third parties to write applications and kind of plugins, bots, and all sorts of stuff. And somebody who has access to this stuff sent me screenshots. They were digging through the code, and it mentioned the word freemium. And it was mentioned so much so that you can kind of put the narrative together. In one spot, it actually says, alert your admin, you're out of storage. And there's another spot inside there that actually says, alert your admin, you're out of storage, and then it references somebody's name. And Dux, is what I did was I took that person's name, plugged it into LinkedIn, which Microsoft owns as well. We should actually talk about LinkedIn at some point on this show. And that individual is the lead on Teams at Microsoft. And I was like, man, here's the narrative. Look, it mentions premium, mentions you're out of storage. It mentions explicitly for non-guest MSA. So I concluded that wasn't referring to this guest feature that just launched.
Sure.
And so what I think they're going to do here, because I think you would probably agree that the largest competitor to Teams is Slack. And Slack has a free tier. So a small company with 5 people can go download Slack, get up and running. They're going to offer a free version of Teams. I reached out to Microsoft for a comment, and they very explicitly said, no comment, you know too much. Paraphrasing here. They don't always like...
But, okay, listen, if we break it down...
Yeah.
Teams is really like a keychain, right?
Yep.
It's an entry point to all the other workloads. SharePoint, OneNote, Planner. So if there's a freemium version of Teams, essentially there's a freemium version of Office 365.
Yeah, the interesting thing, and what we don't know, is what are the limitations going to be. They could limit the number of people that are allowed into a free Teams. It clearly looks like they're going to limit the number and size of uploads, potentially the number of channels, potentially. There's a whole bunch of things they can do. But to your point, though, this is a perfect, pardon the analogy here, but a gateway drug to the rest of the Office 365 environment. And I'll be very curious to see when this is going to be announced. I think it's the very natural evolution. And Microsoft, as you know very well, Dux, is they want that subscriber number, even though it's at 100 million. Well, I think it's around 120, actually. This is their next kind of economic lever that they can pull to say, okay, now we have a top of the sales funnel. Here's 300,000 people using Teams on the free version. What's the lever to get them to jump that fence into the subscription side?
And this model clearly works, right? I mean, if you look at companies like Box, Dropbox, or as you mentioned, Slack, there's still a sizable number of free users, but they make a business out of users realizing that, hey, we need more, so we'll start paying.
Yeah, yeah, and this is, I think, the next kind of big thing. They've done a lot of stuff. They've gone to the education market. They have university SKUs. They have, I always call it frontline, but I think they now call it first line workers. They have, was that, do you know if that first line, was that previously the kiosk SKU?
Kiosk, I believe so. So now it's the F1 SKU, right?
There's a bingo game to be played about trivia and the SKUs inside of Office 365 because they're only getting larger, it seems. And so Microsoft has, as they've kind of made out their nice scenario here, and now they're trying to look into that free offering to make sure that those numbers keep going up. Because I don't know how you feel about this personally, Dux, but I think Microsoft's long-term survival is going to reside in Office 365 and cloud services. Windows is a whole different thing that it comes and goes, but I think Windows and its life cycle has peaked, and Office is the growth metric, and same with their cloud services.
Oh, there's still a big room for opportunity in the phone business, right?
Dux, my man. Well, I mean, technically you're right. The only way Microsoft can go in the phone business is up at this point. The problem is that they spent $10 billion, give or take, and they've gone from zero. Well, they lost market share, right? They used to own that place with Windows Mobile. And then, yeah, the mobile, you pour one out for the mobile.
But kidding aside, I would have to give props to Microsoft, because if you look at on the app side, the software side, and the mobile ecosystem, I mean, look at iOS, right? Top apps among them are mostly Microsoft apps. Mm-hmm. So kudos to Microsoft for that.
Yeah, I mean, they have dealt or handled the cards that they were dealt very well. And even though I loved Windows Mobile and I thought it was a nice, refreshing design, I fully agree with their decision to move away. They weren't making money. At the end of the day, Microsoft is a company that makes money. And they were throwing $10 billion is a lot of money to throw at something and get nowhere with it. And so their apps are great. Outlook, which was the Accompli acquisition, I think is one of their better acquisitions recently. The guy that, interestingly enough, since he's in the news, the guy that was running Accompli, he just got, I think, promoted or side shifted. He's now running Cortana.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, because Cortana, I think, is one of those things. I'd be curious in your opinion, and especially in the workplace. I think Cortana in the workplace makes a lot of sense. It's something that Google can't really do. I don't want to say Amazon's name because it'll fire off some things in my office here. But I'm curious to see, and if you know of any companies who have actually taken even a Harman Kardon Invoke, which I have right here, or are using Cortana in the workplace.
So I'm going to give you an example right now. Today, I'm using Cortana in the workplace. Have you heard of calendar.help?
I'm familiar with it, but not intimately familiar with it.
So I got in the preview program. So essentially, it's a Microsoft technology. It looks at my Office 365 calendar. So let's say I want to schedule a meeting with you. I'll shoot you an email. Hey, Brad, let's meet. And in the body of the email, I'll just say, hey, Cortana, can you schedule a meeting with me and Brad next week? So I'll leave it alone, and then Cortana will just figure it out with you. And that, a simple use case, is so powerful because, I mean, how many times have you how much time have you wasted just trying to go back and forth figuring out meeting schedule, right?
Yep.
So that's just one use case. Or imagine if I can jump on IM and say, hey, Cortana, or even just say it, hey, Cortana, where do I get the expense reimbursement form or something?
Yeah.
Scenarios like that, I'm pretty sure it's possible, and the pieces of the technology is here. It's just a matter of slipping it into the Office 365 stack.
Yeah, the one thing I'm really waiting for, and maybe you guys can do this, Dux, you guys are pretty smart over there, is so obviously Cortana could look up like meeting room availability, but we know that sometimes, you walk by, oh, this room's available, let's just jump in there, nobody reserved it. But imagine if you put motion sensors in all of your meeting rooms and you just say, hey, Cortana, which meeting room's open? And it can actively know because based on motion sensors in there and say, look, this room's open, I'll reserve it for you, just walk on over. And especially, oh man, if they had a Surface Hub in that room too, the hub could just engage, pull all your stuff up if you have OneNote or OneDrive for Business or whatever. Like I feel like we're so close to this tipping point, and Cortana is kind of the thing that's missing that's going to unlock a lot of those unique experiences.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure it's coming. No, one thing you mentioned when you talked about Accompli and Office 365 and apps, just to kind of go back to that, is there's a hidden gem in Office 365, an app that I love so much. It's Microsoft To Do. Have you used that?
So this is very interesting. Yes, I'm very familiar with it, but I will tell you that I ended up paying for a subscription to a competing service because I started with Wunderlist, which
Yeah.
Microsoft ended up buying, and I liked Wunderlist, but the problem was Microsoft in traditional fashion has communication problems, and they said, hey, Wunderlist is going away. And so then I was like, well, great, now I got to go find something else. So I found I'm actually using Todoist is my task management service.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they came back and said, oh, well, Wunderlist isn't really going away, but we also have To-Do. And there's just been a lot of waffling back and forth. I have no problems with To-Do personally. It's just that I'm waiting for it to solidify and Microsoft to really lay down the roadmap for it. But I'm curious why you like it so much.
Yeah, well, I used to use Todoist, and I guess me being cheap, when my renewal was up, I looked at, let me check. I know every week Microsoft has something. So when To-Do first came out, it's not as fully featured yet compared to Todoist, but it's good enough for what I need it for. The reason why I love it is obviously the app is so easy to use on the phone, but it actually hooks up to my Outlook tasks as well. So when I'm at work, I fire up Outlook, whatever I stick in Todoist shows up in Outlook tasks. So again, that integration, I think, would be the key value proposition, regardless if it's To-Do or Outlook or Teams. It's just, especially in the workplace or in the enterprise, being able to use a specific technology, but having that seamless interaction with another technology that Microsoft offers.
Sure. That's I think it kind of goes back to that same Cortana thing. I think people like yourself, you look at To-Do and you're like, oh man, this is so close. They've got it. They've got the bits and pieces there. It's working. I just wish that sometimes I could just go up there and be like, hey, you guys have 110,000 employees. Can you just take like 10,000 of them and just put them on Cortana for a month and just let them just finish all the stuff? So interesting. I need to go back to To-Do. Probably when my Todoist is getting up here.
Yeah.
Which I think is in July, actually. Interesting. So next question I have for you, Dux, and it might be To-Do, but is there anything else inside of Microsoft Office 365, kind of that envelope, that people are overlooking that they should maybe just go try at some point?
Yeah, another technology there that I love, and I think people don't use as much, even though Microsoft promotes it a lot, is Planner. When it first came out, it wanted to address that gap where it's not a big project where people need Microsoft Project or Project Online, but it's big enough that email and Excel doesn't cut it anymore. So I love Planner because the way it's organized and it's visual, and you have plans that you can work on and buckets, and it's very visual. And the other part of Planner is the apps. Again, it's very useful. So if you're in a team and you're working on a project, again, that's not really as formal that you need Microsoft Project or Project Online, Planner is phenomenal. And plus, its integration with Microsoft Teams makes it much, much more compelling.
Yeah, actually, when we met, Dux and I hung out, I don't know, it was probably a month ago, give or take, or something like that. Actually, Blue Whale Web Media Group, the company that I work for and that's helping produce this podcast, we are in the very slow transition process to Teams. We were on Skype, and now we're moving over to Teams. And actually, Planner is one of the things I need to look at because we use a third-party service to actually manage all of our stuff and put all our files everywhere. And now my personal hope, just because we have so many different systems, is that one day Teams is just it, right? That's where all our task management is, and everything else lives inside of there.
I mean, I tell people Teams is my new Outlook. You know how people have Outlook open all day long? Now Teams is my new Outlook. That's like my command center, right? So I think this strategy of pushing Teams and using that team, the service as a one-stop shop is brilliant.
Let me ask you this, because this might get me to switch. Does To-Do tie into Teams?
That's a great question. Not yet, or not that I know of. So
that's where the sad trombone noise needs to be.
That's right. Well, I'm sure it'll come, because one thing with Teams, I think they're investing too on more on the personal side, because obviously the investment around Teams is more around the team-based, collective-based collaboration, but they're investing a lot now more around your personal stuff.
Yeah, because in my mind, what's going to make Teams great, and which is the direction I hope that they're going, is I hope that window, it's like to your point, how you have Outlook open, that window is just my entire work life lives inside of there. And that way, that's the only thing I need to have open, and then I can just jump around inside of there. That's kind of the end goal in my mind that I hope that they get to. Obviously, you still have Outlook open, But if Teams can be everything else, so I don't have to have OneDrive for Business open, so I don't have to have Teams open, so I don't have to have Todoist open and my calendar, that would be actually incredibly powerful.
Well, the way I think about it now is Outlook, again, is my personal life, is my own thing. And then Teams is in that office space, right? Is with that collective of people, my posse, where we all work together. Now, if I want to go back to my own thing, that's Outlook.
Very, very interesting. This will be an ongoing evolution. As we've both said multiple times, Microsoft is investing pretty heavily in Teams. And I will be very curious to see how this product grows up. I wonder if we'll see much at Build, which is in May. Are you going to Build?
Yeah, May 5th, I think, or May 7th to 9 or something like that. Yeah, and I just registered today, so definitely I'll look forward to seeing you.
Yeah, no, I'm all registered. Well, actually, that's a bold lie. I have my flight and hotel booked. Microsoft likes to send the press actual codes to register already 2 weeks before the event. For whatever reason, they wait till the end. But if nothing else, I will be outside standing and banging on the doors because I already have a flight and hotel paid for to head up there.
You get to seat in the front too during keynote, so
yeah, it's festival seating though. What Microsoft typically does, and it's a little frustrating for those who have never actually been, and this is the epitome of first world complaining, is some seats will have wired Ethernet and some have Wi-Fi, and you never really know until you get really close to them. And because of all the image uploading, and the Wi-Fi at Microsoft events has a very finicky track record of just not working, getting that wired Ethernet is always a good strategy if you can make it happen, obviously, which is fun because these things don't actually have wired Ethernet ports, so
you gotta get your adapter, right?
The dongle life, man. It's a real thing.
Hashtag struggle is real.
You are absolutely not wrong. It's even worse too because I have a whole bunch of these like cheap ones. So every kind of like Surface event that Microsoft has, they typically have wired Ethernet, and they give you a free kind of Ethernet dongle thing, and they're great, but they have a very limited shelf life. So in my backpack, I have like 3 or 4 of them now, and you're just swapping them out, trying to figure out which one's going to work and which one survived.
It's like those USB sticks, right? Now you don't know which one's good or which one's not.
Yeah, or you pull one out and it's 50 megabytes because you've had it in your desk drawer for 10 years. For 10 years here. All right, Dux, as we're winding it down, one of the things we're going to do at the end of every single show is just kind of give Dux a little chance to dish. It could be on anything, talk about travel, just lighten it up, help you guys get to know us so that when you see us at conferences, you don't feel free to approach us. We talk to people all day long. But Dux, now is your time to dish.
So speaking of dish, I don't know if a lot of people know about this. I love traveling. I love food. So last week I was I had the great opportunity to visit our Munich office, hang out with my colleagues there, and I actually went to Microsoft Tech Summit in Frankfurt as well. But while in Munich, I've been always wanting to try this, so finally I did. I tried Haxenbauer. So essentially it's deep fried pork knuckle. And boy, it's crispy, crunchy. At least the skin is, and then inside the meat, it's melt in your mouth, delicious. So if you haven't tried it, you have to try it, Brad.
So I don't know if it was the exact same thing, but I was in Munich. I used to go to Munich all the time. I've been there probably 10, 12 times now. And we were at a restaurant, a very German, authentic, outside, it was kind of on the outer rungs of Munich. And we walked in, they didn't have an English menu, and he just kind of pointed at things. He said pork, cow, chicken. And I just pointed at the pork one, and he went, mwah, and went off and brought it back, and it was a pork's knuckle. But I don't think it was deep fried. I have pictures of it somewhere, and it was okay. I mean, it was. You are much more adventurous in the food variety than I am, but I just remember sitting there. They bring this thing out, and I'm like, all right,
well, dude,
here we go.
The next episode, I got to tell you about that one time I was in Vietnam. Ooh, I had mongrels and then snake blood. Really good.
See, for whatever reason, like mentally, like liquids, I'm totally fine with. Like I would do snake blood. I think. Was it like in a shot of vodka by any chance?
Yeah, shot of vodka with beating heart. That's fresh. So as you down it, you'll feel the heart go down as well.
That might have been a little far for me. It might have been a little bit far. But Dux, for anybody watching, what's the best way to reach you if they have questions?
Absolutely. So again, thank you for having me. If you have questions, hit me up on Twitter at meetdux, MEETDUX, and would love to connect with you. And thank you again, Brad, for this opportunity. Looking forward to our future conversations around Office 365. But you don't have to wait till the next episode. Like Brad says, if you have questions, hit us up, and we're here.
Yeah, no, this is going to be, like I said at the beginning of the show, I'm very excited about this journey because podcasting is by far one of my favorite things to do. It's technically a little challenging getting everything up and running, but once you do it, like this is my favorite thing that I do every single week. And, we're looking to evolve this and make it more informal for you. If there's anything on your side, the listener side, that you need help with, don't hesitate to reach out. Or if you have comments or feedback about the show, about segments we should do, we are very happy to listen to that because this is much like everything else in the Microsoft world. This is living and evolving, and we are going to rock on until the next show. But as always, everybody, thanks for tuning in and have yourselves a wonderful day.
All right. Bye.